Well, welcome back to the Traditionalist. I'm with my guest, Nick Dysart. So why don't you go ahead and tell us about yourself, Nick?
It's always hard talking about yourself. My name is Nick. I work and own a marketing, social media, online business. I'm probably way too much engaged in politics and the internet than is healthy. I try to play guitar. I ride a motorcycle, and I hate winter. So
No, winter's been rough this year. Like, I came from Fort Drum, New York, and I was like, I'm finally getting out of this like winter hellhole. And I came back, and Ohio decides to have like one of its worst winters in like decades.
I think we had 5 months of January this year.
Yeah, no, like we're in third winter.
Yes.
So you mentioned that you run a small business. What's
Social media. We started it almost 3 years ago, based in Marion, Ohio, and basically we saw a niche where small business and local business is really important to my girlfriend and I, who started and run the business, and we saw an opportunity in town in that so many small business owners were so focused on running their business they didn't have time or the knowledge or the ability to do any sort of online marketing. And as culture has shifted from print media and traditional media to the social media and the online media, that we wanted to do all that we could to support local and small businesses and help bring them into that sort of realm. And we'd much rather them focus on running their business and doing that well, and we'll focus on the advertising and do that well, and then everybody wins.
So when you do it, is it more like pertaining to their social media accounts, or do you do like ads? Like
we do both. Depending on the client, we have some clients that say we want to run a targeted ad campaign. Here's the content. Here's what we're after. You dial in the audience and figure out the ad spend. We have some clients that literally couldn't tell Facebook from Instagram, and so
wow.
and that's not a bad thing, because what they do, I couldn't do. So, we'll manage everything from a comment to a like to making sure that there's content, consistently posted that pertains to their account. But we really try to focus more on the organic growth of a social media platform. Anybody can come in with $1,000 and say, I want to have 1,000 likes on my page, and I want this video to be seen by 12,000 people. And that's great. You can do that. The problem is when you're done running that money, that audience goes away. So what we do is we focus on organic growth, which is free and then lasts longer, because you're attracting people to a page and to a topic that they're actually interested in, which means they're going to stick around and interact and engage with it.
When you say organic growth, what do you mean by organic growth?
Free, not paid for.
Oh, okay.
So organic growth is, so for instance, let's use your platform as a for instance.
Okay.
So your audience would be people who are interested in what you're talking about and what is discussed on your show. So finding a way to engage with that audience and get them to like your page, but then also to continue interacting with your page, is organic growth. Paid for growth is when you say, I'm going to spend $500 to get 1,000 people to like my video.
Oh, all right. I see the difference.
And those numbers feel great, and sometimes they're necessary, because you need to get out there in front of a bunch of people to try to collect the 10% that are actually interested in your product. It's a quick way to do it, but it's an expensive way to do it, and it's a lot like just shooting a shotgun at a target and hoping you hit something.
Okay. Well, you obviously, like, your company is pretty multifaceted. You made the logos for mine, so like,
yeah, I don't know about that. I lived with one of my best friends who's an actual graphic designer for like 6 years. This dude is phenomenal, and so everything that I do, I feel like, is a stick figure drawing compared to what he does. So I very rarely like to take credit for any design work.
No, I mean,
it's fun.
I appreciate it. Like, I got some real positive feedback.
Good.
Like, I post them online and let people kind of decide which ones, and
Good.
like, kind of went with what I thought. I was very particular too.
Well, that's good. I'm glad that worked out.
So would you say Facebook's like your main platform that you work on? Or?
Yeah, for sure. So the last time, if I remember the statistic correct, 72% of adults that have the internet will check Facebook at least once a month.
Really?
Yeah. So Facebook is your largest demographic to hit all the demographics, I guess. But what we're seeing is age groups are tending to filter more towards different social media. Facebook will continue to be the giant until they sink their own ship, which they've done a good job of trying to do lately.
Yeah.
If you really want to hit the 18 to 35 demographic, Instagram is a great place to do it. If you want to hit the 22 to 17 demographic, Snapchat is a great place to do it. If you want to hit it doesn't matter how old I am, but I'm really kind of stuffy, then LinkedIn is a great way to do it. But LinkedIn is continually just trying to become the professional Facebook. They keep rolling out new features that is just an emulation of Facebook. The best part about LinkedIn is I've never seen a sonogram picture, and I don't see a lot of cat memes. So I kind of like LinkedIn for that.
I think I've been on LinkedIn like a solid 2 times in my entire life. So
it's 1 time more than most people.
Yeah.
So.
No, so I'm a veteran, and LinkedIn provides their services for us free. So like to get out, you have to like make a LinkedIn account, and then you have to like show them you made a LinkedIn account, and that was like the 2 times I got on LinkedIn.
It's a good way to find employees, and it's a good way to find a job. But I find that too many people use it to just promote stuff that doesn't pertain to anybody outside of their business.
I think it's I think the funniest thing I ever saw. So when I was on LinkedIn, it kind of brings up people you may know based on like your employment history, and I put like military, police, obviously, and it brought up the first guy was, I'm not kidding you, it was like a shirtless guy in his LinkedIn profile. I'm like, that's a solid. I'm like, he was an MP too, and like that said that, and that was the common connection. I was like, I think you're missing the point of what.
Yeah. If you aren't wearing a shirt and tie on LinkedIn, you're doing it wrong.
No, just like straight up. It was a straight up bathroom mirror selfie with like no shirt, and I was like, oh, this.
There's probably handprints on the mirrors.
Yeah, like, a little streaky, like a little toothpaste.
Dear Lord.
So like, you mentioned like they're sinking their own ship or trying to at least like it's pretty crazy. Has that kind of affected you at all with all this?
No, and most of that is because, like I said, we do so much of the organic work that So let's go way back to what's freaking people out about Facebook, right? So you've got Cambridge Analytica that essentially mined data illegally. And the way that worked was there's an app that if you logged into it, it told you, I'm going to take all your data. And people were like, but I need to know what kind of bread I am. So I'm going to say yes. Which is, anyway.
The surveys flat out tell you beforehand, like, oh, we have access to this, that.
And you can read all that, and Facebook in the sign up tells you all of that. So this is not a surprise. Where that app went astray was that instead of just mining your data, it would also mine your friend's data.
Okay.
So that's obviously a problem, right? If you have a friend over and then they go to your neighbor's house and rob them, like, that's bad.
Right.
But if you invite someone in, they're like, hey, can I have this? And you're like, sure. Thanks for telling me what sort of bread I am.
Yeah.
Like, that's fine. What is dumb, I don't want to say dumb, but what people are confused about is Facebook keeps a file essentially on every person, but it's not the like Bob Smith file. You're given like a serial number that's not traceable to you. It's all encrypted in such a way that no one's going to like open it and just read everything about you. Like that's not how data is stored. That's not how encryption works. But what it does allow ads to do is if I want to run an ad for people that like Coca-Cola, I can say I want males 18 to 35 that live in Cleveland, Ohio, that like the Cavaliers, that like Coca-Cola.
Right.
And then I send an ad to them.
Is that, all right, so I'm completely illiterate in all this kind of thing.
Sure.
Is that also, like, that whole, like, big, like, it wasn't, no one was really mad about it, but it was kind of like, people were interested in it, was where the Facebook chose your political beliefs based on, is it kind of related to that?
Well, it's related to that, but Facebook didn't choose that. Facebook correlated that.
Right.
So when you only go to Breitbart.com for your news, Facebook looks at your cookies, which is stored in your browser, and goes, this guy only goes to Breitbart.com. He's probably a crazy right-winger. And that's fair. If you're only ever getting your news from Breitbart, you're just as nuts as someone who only gets their news from CNN or, Occupy Democrats or something like that. But all of the data that Facebook uses is based on habits or likes that you've told them. So in interests, if you go through and it says, what's your favorite movie, and you list 38 sci-fi movies, it's safe to say that you're a sci-fi fan. right? That's not like some people view privacy different.
I don't think that if you're publicly putting that, I'm
Right.
kind of against some of the stuff Facebook
Sure.
pulled and everything, but people have to understand they're putting that information out there
Yes.
themselves, and for the website to recognize that it's not very wrong.
Right. No, there's instances where they've proven that like Facebook Messenger was pulling phone calls and text messages and that kind of stuff. Now that I have an issue with because that's off-platform activity, and that's not cool.
And you can't delete it too.
Right. Well, you can
But-
can request your file and request it deleted, and it's a whole process. But it is a process, and so the whole concept of this is that marketers are able to send ads to people that is relevant to them. And so I have no problem with that. If you want to send me an ad for the best place to find 5.56 ammo, I will gladly take that over an ad for the newest type of tampon.
Right, because it applies directly to you.
Exactly. And in 2018, you're going to see ads. And we're going to see ads more and more and more. So please make them relevant to me because I can't get rid of them. So at least make them interesting or something that I care about.
Well, I've definitely bought stuff off ads targeting me. So I
Sure.
ride a lot, and my ears get cold when I ride because I wear a German style helmet. I'm actually switching to a full face because my mom tells me I'm too handsome to ride with that. But
See, I have the opposite. I keep hoping my face gets scratched off so I get a new one. I hope that one's better.
I bought a headband. Have you ever seen like that headbands?
Yeah.
I bought one off there, and I actually bought two, and I really like it, like an Indian style one. Like it's got like that, like I don't know how to describe it, but it would be like something on like an Indian artwork.
Sure,
And
sure.
man, I love that thing. I ride with it all the time. It keeps my ears warm.
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone has bought something because of an ad. I think it's impossible to say that you haven't. And the more relevant they are to you, the higher the chance is that you're able to do that. And it's all tracked, and it's great. You can set up a whole system that says, tell me how many dollars it took on Facebook for me to sell this product on my website. And it's all trackable, and it's great. What people think is that somehow Facebook stole their like blood type and their social security number and their DNA and is like selling that off to clone them or something ridiculous. And that's just not the case. And I think that was the panic and the ignorance was there was no better proof than the line of questioning that came to Mark Zuckerberg from sitting elected officials.
Oh, there were some horrible ones. There was some good ones. Like Ted Cruz
was perfect.
Yeah, but the other ones, it was they're talking about the WhatsApp.
Well,
yeah, that was rough. That was rough.
So I'm a huge fan of Senator Orrin Hatch. Like I have seen him light people's boats on fire and sink their ship like that, and it was amazing. And I love Orrin Hatch. When Orrin Hatch asked, "How does a company that is free make money?"
Ads.
We run ads, Senator. Like I had an aneurysm.
Like I was like, it made me like facepalm. Like literally, I was like, oh my goodness. So, but like, I gave him the benefit of the doubt of he was just trying to clarify.
Sure.
But I still don't think that's what it was.
But I don't think anybody was confused on that except
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling that all of these senators, Ted Cruz excluded, had their interns like just give them a list of internet buzzwords, and they just tried to fit as many of those internet buzzwords into one sentence as they could. And that's how we got people asking, so if I email you in WhatsApp, will I get a banner ad? Those are just buzzwords.
Yeah,
that's not how that works.
Yeah.
Right. If I put a tire in my trunk, will it change my... Those are just car words.
Yeah.
That's not how cars work.
I think the biggest thing to come out of that was they were able to kind of finally address the fact of conservative pages.
Oh, for sure.
Being, not just
Neutered.
banned. Yeah, it is. What they're silk and
Diamond and Silk.
Yeah, that was
Labeled
like,
as hate and terrorism.
yeah, because they're two black women that think off the Democratic plantation, basically.
Oh, yeah, the thought police can't have that. They're not following the approved line of thought for an African-American woman.
Yeah, so we'll get back to that because I'm huge in like anti-identity politics.
Absolutely.
And I want to kind of talk about Kanye a little bit, but
Sure.
They reinstated the page after it was blocked, but they have no traffic now. Like they
Right.
have one of the largest following bases on. I really don't follow them,
Sure.
but they're getting like 15 views now on their stuff. 15. They have like hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of subscribers.
Right.
And now they're basically just being blocked. From it.
So there's a term for that, and it's called being shadow banned.
Right.
Twitter is famous for it. Instagram does it. Instagram's owned by Facebook, so it's very easy to assume that Facebook does it as well. Where your page is live, and anybody that wants to go to it can, but it's just not being put into the timeline algorithm.
Okay.
And if it is, it's being put in at a very low percentage.
I think a lot of that is, it kind of stems, like, I always try to find out, like, what caused this, you know, like, what is the reasoning behind this? And
Sure.
I think the biggest thing is it's the culture war.
Mm-hmm.
It's something the Republicans right wing, whatever you lie on that end of the spectrum. If you do, it's we suck at it. And like you look at Silicon Valley, like
Yeah.
that's where all this is coming out of, and that's where all the people are going to do this. We're never gonna. We have what, maybe like the guy that runs the Drudge Report, like he's kind of out of there. But like other than that, we don't have anything.
No, in Silicon Valley, no, and conservatives will always lose the culture war because we say no.
Right.
Or we say don't do that because it's bad. So I've always kind of I love the analogy of the babysitter. So the liberal babysitter is the one that says cake for dinner, stay up as late as you want, watch cartoons, you know, sit 2 feet from the TV to watch cartoons. And people love them, like that's their favorite babysitter. But then the conservatives are the babysitter that says, I need you to eat your vegetables, I need you to go to bed at 8, and don't sit 2 feet from the TV, also go outside and play.
Mm.
And none of those are as fun as the other things, but they're also better for you. And because someone's telling you no or don't do that harmful activity, they're labeled as hateful. Because how dare you take away someone's joy? How dare you take away someone's pleasure, regardless of how healthy that is for them?
Right. I've never heard that analogy, and I super like it. The first analogy, I was thinking about this the other day. The first analogy I ever heard comparing like a liberal to a conservative is, a conservative has his tie on perfect and drives the speed limit, and a liberal goes 5 miles over and has his tie a little bit looser. And that was the first one. I mean, it's kind of right, but like I was like, oh, I'm probably a liberal guy, and like, but I was like in high school and I heard that, so I didn't know any better. But you know, I think like I like that analogy a lot better.
Well, I totally understand anyone being a liberal under the age of 21, even 25, until you've seen your paycheck get slashed in a third.
Yeah, or in other countries, 60-70%.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's an adolescence to liberal trains of thought, in that it's only focused on the immediate. What's the immediate? What's the quick solution that makes everybody feel good?
You can see that with the March for Our Lives. They want to ban guns, but they don't know the repercussions of it just because it sounds good.
Well, they also don't even know what guns they were trying to ban or how they work or
anything
or anything. And I get that, and I always will applaud political activism and protest. But if you want your protest to be effective, you have to protest a specific metric. So let me talk about for instance, $15 an hour minimum wage. Mm-hmm. No,
right?
No. But you dialed in on an exact metric, on an exact amount for an exact person, and that's a conversation that can be had. When you have an 18-year-old screaming, "Guns are horrible! Get rid of all guns!" Like that's so general
and broad
and not true, that you can't have that conversation.
No, it's 100% right. I mean, you know me, I'm very politically active. I go to protests all the time. It's at least 2 or 3 a month I end up at a protest or at an event where there are protesters, and I talk to these people all the time. I was at Charlie Kirk's event in Indiana, University of Pennsylvania, and there's people talking about banning guns, but one half of them couldn't tell you what a semi-automatic rifle was, or like or anything. Well, here, perfect example. I'm in college, so I'm finishing up, and I'm in a judicial process class, and we had to do reports on specific Supreme Court cases, and I can't remember the specific one. Basically, it was a case pertaining to Second Amendment rights. And it was in 2010. I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but they went around and interviewed people on what their thoughts on the Second Amendment were, and it was members of our campus's college Democrats. So they're already going to interview their friends group. So it was actually a hard video to watch.
Sure.
But they were saying we should ban this type of weapon, all semi-automatic. weapons. But, they don't know what semi-automatic means.
Right.
Or the next one, but the same person will said, well, we should have pistols because they're not military grade. Well, one, pistols are 99% of the time semi-automatic.
Yeah, right. Unless you have a revolver, which even then is technically...
Yeah. And then I was in the military. I carried a pistol. So is that not a military weapon? I didn't carry in the military was an AR-15.
Right, right. So the standard issue military is a 6-hour 9mm, isn't it?
I had
or
a
a
Beretta.
40.
It's a Beretta 9mm for the Army. I think the Marines are different. If I'm not wrong.
I think the Marines have the SIG.
Yeah,
I think they just took that from Glock.
The Army is switching over, but I can't remember what. But we had a Beretta 9mm.
Okay.
So, and then the M4 been like 240. But it's completely off the point. But like these people have no idea. And like what you said is, if you want to have a protest, which is fine. If you want to legitimize yourself, know what you're protesting, have a goal in mind. You can't just protest a boogeyman, then you don't know what the boogeyman is.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite Ben Shapiro, and Ben Shapiro is one of my favorite people to listen to and to read. But one of his points is, show me a law that is racist, or show me a law that is whatever, and I will fight it with you.
I agree, and I've used that with people. I stole that from them a little bit. But.
Yeah, it's great because no one's on the other side of this. No one is promoting racism.
Or in guns case, school shootings.
Yeah, correct. No one is promoting school shootings. No one is promoting murder, except Planned Parenthood. But anyway, so show me a law that promotes murder or helps it.
Right.
And let's look at that.
Or even a law that, like, inadvertently allows it to happen.
Sure.
But if you want to start passing gun legislation, it doesn't curb it. That's the point, like, pro-gun people are trying to make.
Right. You can make something double, extra, super duper illegal, and it's already illegal. So adding more laws to that does not help in any way. So I can't comprehend why the left will not just come out and say an all-out gun ban is our goal.
Because that's what they always get to. You talk to them, and that's what it always...
That's always what it gets to, and I wish they would just start there. Because then we can have an honest conversation.
Exactly. Instead
of the spaghetti ball of thought that it takes until they're finally like, no one should have guns. And then, in one conversation, they'll tell you no one should have guns, and they'll tell you that the government is tyrannical.
And they should take the guns.
So I'm supposed to give my gun to the tyrannical government.
Yeah, it actually kind of makes me... I want to get back to that. But you said we're not going to talk about the morality of Planned Parenthood because, I mean,
It'd be a short conversation.
We know we agree on it. But what bothers me is all these people saying we need the, NRAs, we get to get the NRA's money out of politics. The NRA is not funded by, they might pay their membership dues there, but there's no government subsidy towards
the NRA receives $0 from the U.S. government.
But Planned Parenthood
receives billions.
That's like 75% of their funding
Correct.
is from there. But they also, and they're considered a nonprofit, and they donate back to the politicians.
Sure.
They want NRA to stop, but they don't care about that. That's so hypocritical to me. Or like, if you want it one way, but you can't have it the
that whole thing goes back to the culture war that conservatives have lost, in that now somehow murdering offspring is the moral right. You have the moral right to decide to kill a baby. And I've always. The whole thing just disgusts me and astounds me.
Well, the argument I tried to have on that is, I guess we might delve into it a little bit, but is, all right, so you want to, we gotta agree at some point there is a child inside of a woman. And they're like, yeah, we agree, at some point it's too late.
Most of them don't. Well, they think that by magically moving through the birth canal it becomes a living thing. Like the minute the baby passes through the vagina, it's like bestowed life.
There it is. It's
like, zot. You are now, that's not...
There's babies at 22 weeks that survive, you know, and then I always ask them if the ones that do say that, so you're right, there's a lot of people that do this completely say that it doesn't matter until it's born.
Right.
And But I'd be like, all right, 22 weeks. Would you say that's too like late? And they're like, that's getting in the gray area. But I'm like, like week 15, it's got hair and nails. Like, if you saw that, that's a child. Like,
for sure, and that's why the scale argument. They like to toss around this word viability, and what they will not ever no one will have the conversation that a newborn baby is no more independent than it was 3 months ago.
It wouldn't survive on its own.
It won't. If you take a newborn baby and lay it on the table, it will die because it's not dependent. It is. So that argument of viability is so many holes in it. The problem with the life scale, right? When you start trying to assign months to it, is at some point you have to say that this is not a life. It's not alive. But it is. Like, cells are growing that are not the mother's. So it is either alive or it's not, and there's no gray area of like pseudo life, because then if there's that scale of dead to alive, you have to flip it around and apply it to the elderly.
Right. Well, or even the sick. So, if you have an iron lung, like I think Ben Shapiro is the one that brought that up. It's like the iron lung recipient is not self-dependent. They have to rely on that.
Right.
So do they not have life? Do they not have the right to life at that point?
Right.
And that's where that argument usually goes south and usually get called big.
Oh yeah. The minute a liberal loses an argument, the insults pour out, and that's how you know that you've won. The more insulting they are, the better you've argued. And what's interesting to me is conservatives are always labeled intolerant or unloving or uncaring, yet we're the ones constantly saying, don't murder your babies. But we're the uncaring, intolerant, apathetic ones.
But I think a lot of it is, so they've successfully flipped the narrative on us because historically Democrats have been the racist party and or the party not trying to progress, just poisoning alcohol during Prohibition.
There was a Democratic senator that was involved in the KKK still in office until like 2011 or 13.
Yeah, it was his name. Bert are they talking? Wasn't yeah.
Go down to West Virginia, you'll see it everywhere.
Yeah, so they flipped the narrative, but I think people on the right, Republican Party, they don't really care about race. They don't make it a race thing.
No, not at all.
It's a character thing. It's a merit thing, and you see black people successful on the right all the time. Ben Carson, Supreme Court Justice, Clarence Thomas. But they always get they're the token. No, they're not the token. They're the successful black man in the right, and you quit trying to take away from their success. And I think that bothers me. That's more racist than anything. Then that's where you see Kanye West he's getting attacked by everyone.
Yeah.
Just because he left that ideological plantation, and he's like, well, maybe I should celebrate. He didn't even say he agreed with policy. He just I like the idea of free thought. And
for sure.
And not groupthink.
Groupthink is bad. Identity politics is horrible. There's nothing good about it. And I think, what's her name? She just had a video come out where
Candace
Owens had a phenomenal line about that. How you can, if you keep looking back at an atrocity that happened 300 years ago, you will stay there.
Yeah.
However, if you choose to say that did not affect me directly, I'm going to move forward and be successful, then you will be.
I think Candace is actually a perfect, not to interrupt, but I know Candace. Like, I've met her several times. And her grandfather was I might be wrong, but I believe this is what she told me. Her grandfather was the son of slaves. And he worked on farms. Like, he was a serf, or like, what it was, basically after his slavery ended, they kind of like allowed them to work for like minimum pay. And it was basically like slavery with an asterisk. But that's what her grandfather did. Like, he's an older man, and he's like, and she was explaining to him like modern day liberalism. The guy's a conservative now. And he went from that, being raised in that environment, to Candace Owens, his granddaughter, being celebrated by the president, being celebrated by mainstream like musicians and everything. And you know who's attacking her? The Democrats.
Sure.
And I think it shows a lot. It's if you do, like, people say the bootstrap theory is a myth. I think it is. She worked hard. She developed her own platform and spoke out, and she got a following, and she's a very successful woman.
The bootstrap concept is not a myth. It's just very hard.
I agree.
In our society today doesn't like to do things that are hard. welfare is really easy. So there's, it always kind of strikes me funny. You go back 200 years ago, and we were like trying to carve our existence out of the wilderness, and men were men and women were women, and no one was offended by anything.
It was survival.
It was survival, and we've progressed so far, and that's not a bad thing, but we've gotten to the point where now offense is the most important thing about us. Like, will I be offended today? Will I offend someone today? Oh my gosh! Like, what if I'm offended? Oh, and it's devolving us as a society. It's devolving us as thinkers. It's devolving us as artists. It's devolving us as philosophers, because you can't do something that might offend someone else.
Yeah, because now offense holds weight. Like people,
right?
It's actually like a concern for people. Like you were saying,
it's a currency,
and it's not a viable thing. No one, Jordan Peterson said, if you want to be a thinker, you have to risk being offended.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm a huge Jordan Peterson fan. I think he's like the top of my Mount Rushmore of like political thinkers, and I don't even agree with him on everything, but he's just, and he it's that post like materialistic like Marxist ideologies that really push that narrative. It's what's good for everyone, and if you really think about it, we're all oppressed one way or another. You know what I mean? There's wealth and stuff, but when you start like focusing on certain oppression, that's when you like start. That's where identity politics come from. Well, they're more oppressed than it's not how it works. It's,
right. No, that's exactly right. And one of the things about this whole concept that just drives me crazy is this Bigfoot-esque myth of white privilege. It does not exist in any way. Now, there's anecdotal. Well, if a black guy walks into a white neighborhood and the cops pull him over, great. Go to the south side of Chicago and see what happens if you're a white guy. Like
I think it's
not the same thing.
I think it's important to realize that white privilege did exist. When like I would say it definitely existed when there was slavery. You know what I mean? Like but now in today's society in the United States, since the Civil Rights Movement, there is no barrier. There's no, like Ben Shapiro said.
Let's go back even farther. We didn't invent slavery in the Americas.
Oh, no, I'm just saying.
We didn't even invent slavery in the UK.
No, not at all. I just think during that time you could argue that there was, but today there isn't.
I don't see it as a privilege. I see it as a base zero.
Okay.
So you did not gain anything by being white. Like you weren't able to fly.
I see what you're saying.
But you didn't have the same base zero as an African American in the 1850s. Okay. And I think that concept of a base zero is what separates a lot of the thought. And I don't see it as a racial thing at all. I think there's cultural privilege, and I would totally agree with that. Mm-hmm. That certain cultures, be it people that come from a wealthy family, yes, you have privileges. Mm-hmm. But not all wealthy families are white. And in fact, in America, the highest earning demographic is Asians.
By far.
By far. They earn the most, they have the lowest rate of crime committed and perpetrated against them.
Education,
they blow out of the water. So, like, sorry,
but no one
but it's
says
not us.
Yeah, if there's any privilege, it'd be Asian privilege. But you don't hear that because it doesn't fit the narrative.
Right.
I actually, ironically, had an Asian girl. She was in the Army. Told me she was telling me about my white privilege, and I was like, "Well, I hate to break it to you." But,
right. No, I mean, there's stereotypes that white people have stereotypes too. But I can understand where different demographics and different minorities have stereotypes that they find harmful. Like Asian women can't drive, or Asians are really good at math. And if that really offends you and upsets you, that I think you're inherently good at math, I'm sorry. But I don't know if I don't know what it takes to move away from this currency of victimhood. You know, the whole idea of intersectional politics drives me crazy. You know, if you can claim to be a black Muslim woman, like you get victim points,
and then your opinions
matter more, right? Regardless of what the topic is.
Yeah. Or even if you have any education on the topic.
Correct, and that's why I absolutely hate when I hear it's time for a woman. No, it's not. It's time for the best candidate. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what genitals you have. I want the best person for the job.
Right. Like just like people,
and that's an inherently conservative thing, right? Because that is the least racist, sexist thing you could say is I don't care what you look like, I don't care what your genes are. I care how qualified you are. And that was one of the things that drove me crazy about the Zuckerberg hearing was when he got grilled by the senator who essentially demanded he put an African American on his board. Mm-hmm. Like, why? I don't care what color you put on your board. Put someone on there who's qualified and educated. I don't care if they're purple and have 3 sets of genitalia. If they're the smartest person, great.
Give them the job. Exactly. And I was kind of making that point earlier. We get pigeonholed for being on the right as the racist when we believe in merit and qualifications.
Right.
But it's because we see through race. It's not because we see race. The left looks at it as race as everything.
Yes.
You have to hit that certain quota. But that, I think, does more harm for those minorities than anything. Sure. And I think that's where, we're back to, like, Kanye and the culture war and all that. But they bought into it so hard that they can't escape that grasp.
Sure.
They have that, and they're like, oh, you're racist, but we're the ones that make everything about race.
Sure. And one of the best examples of that is affirmative action.
Oh, it's horrible.
Where essentially different minorities were given more acceptance into a college, regardless of their individual GPA or abilities, and so many of them flunked out and then were just saddled with a ton of college debt and never went anywhere because they were put into a atmosphere that they could not thrive in simply because of the color of their skin. Mm-hmm. Anytime anyone is treated differently, better or worse, because of the color of their skin, that is racism. Anytime. So what I would love to see is on college applications, the gender box goes away. I'd love to see the race box go away. Now, obviously, if your name is Sally Smith, chances are they'll be able to figure out you're a female. But who cares what your gender is and what your race is when you're applying to college? It should not matter. Same for job applications.
I looked at the survey, and I can never remember what it was, but the point of it was to try to eliminate race and gender as much as they could. So they did massed voiced phone interviews. Sure. It was all I don't think they actually was a job, but people still applied for it and all that. And the hiring rate, or maybe it was, I can't remember exactly, but the hiring rate was identical to how each demographic was represented into the population. So 13% of the hires were black, 52% of the hires were women, to the T for every race and every gender. That's how they were hired to the percentage.
Not surprised at all.
So, and I can't remember, so when you do civil service tests, I can't remember what police department was, because I was originally looking at doing police when I got out. And there was more points on the civil service test for being black than there was for being veteran or with prior police experience.
Okay. And
I was like, well, so you're going to tell me that he's more qualified based on skin color than I am for having...
That is racism, for sure. And it's because the only diversity that the left cares about is diversity of color, not diversity of thought or diversity of ability.
Oh, no. Have you seen the Kent, there's a student aide, she was throwing out applications for conservative students?
I did. Yep, absolutely. And again, turn that around and imagine that a conservative said, I love just shredding all the Democrat applications that I get. There would have been a crucifixion. Well, publicly, televised on CNN.
Kent's horrible. I don't know if you've ever been to Kent.
I have, yep.
They, Black Lives Matter protested their Black Squirrel Festival there this past year because it was racist. I thought that was, they're squirrels,
The more you look for racism, so many people take the lens of racism, plop it on, and then stare at everything and go, everything is racist. Right. Now take those off and look around and see what you see. And that is how so many of the Black Lives activists and the Southern Poverty Law Center, like they seek out and prescribe racism where it is not in existence.
And everything. They have so many hate groups on their like watch list that like no, there's some legitimate hate groups on their watch list.
Absolutely there are.
But they're like 60% of them aren't. They're just regular groups that have like, you know, they might be conservative or they might be religious based, and they just label them as hate groups. The Southern, I think that's a fear mongering source of information, and people buy into it so much
because it's you know, it's their confirmation bias.
Oh, exactly. And it allows them to be victims. I think that's a major point. In our today's society, people just want to be victims.
Absolutely, they do. Because if they're a victim, they're coddled in every way.
And their shortcomings have an excuse. That's what I always want is, all right, so I didn't make it. It's because on the color of my skin. Not that I have a felony or I have... You know, I haven't worked a job in 3 years.
Right.
It's because it's racism, or it's because it's sexism.
Personal responsibility died in like 2001.
Oh, I mean, I'm part of this generation where no, not everyone's bad.
Have you eaten a Tide Pod yet?
No, I haven't. I heard they're good though. But
yum.
But then, so I think that also translates to like why people want big government. So people have like you said, like they moved away from that. And now they want the government to take care of them. And I think that's why so many people advocate for socialism or even communism. And you think it's crazy. There's people on our college campus that are just straight out communists, like open about it. If they did that in the 50s, like they'd be...
If they did that in the 2005s,
yeah,
they would have been laughed out of the place.
I know, but they have to be accepted. Like, and they're the ones that are mad at you for not supporting them.
Sure.
Even though they're supporting genocidal regimes.
Well, I tell you what, I will always entertain a conversation with someone that wants to discuss the benefits of communism. I'll have that conversation, but they won't have it because there's no way for them to present it in a way where it works. And you know that whole, well, socialism's just never been implemented correctly. Right.
Exactly.
Right. So if in all the attempts they've never gotten it right, why do you think
my favorite thing is like, well, this person corrupted it or this person did this. I'm like, well, you're trying to advocate for, so even hypothetically it's right. You know, hypothetically, to entertain them, you're like, well, let's say socialism does work. But why would you trust a system that's so susceptible to being corrupted by one single person or one single group of people?
Right.
I mean, you can't give that power to anybody.
It's greed is what it comes down to, is people that want socialism want something that they have not earned. And that's all that they see. They don't understand it's that immediate solution like we talked about earlier, that very near field focus where they say, well, under socialism, like I'd get more stuff. Well, okay, but at what cost? And for how long? And those are questions that they can't comprehend because now you're interfering with them getting free stuff. And that's bad, and that hurts their feelings and gives them a tummy ache. But something I do want to circle back to real quick is discussing racism in the United States. Obviously, racism still exists.
Oh, definitely.
But it does not exist anywhere near the level that the mainstream media, which is a mouthpiece for the left, and everyone, if you don't know that, you just haven't accepted it yet. It does not exist anywhere near to the amount that they claim that it does. You talk to the most right-wing conservative guy ever, and he is not a racist. What I've seen is you got this pocket of the KKK or the neo-Nazis or what have you, and they're like 0.00001% of the population. So yeah, there's people out there that are racist, and there's black people that are racist against white people, and there's Asian people that are racist against other Asian people, and there's racism exists
in every race, yeah,
and it probably always will. However, there is not some, like, we don't have secret white people meetings where we discuss how to be racist against whatever race you want to pick out.
Oh, that's right. Because people act like we do that. Like they legitimately act like white people are just trying to hold us down. This time, I'm like, well, I don't know what I'm doing wrong, so I'm not getting invited to these meetings.
Yeah. Well, if you aren't giving them free stuff, you're holding them down.
Right.
So, what I see as a solution to that, because I don't think our system is working. Throwing money at it isn't working. New subsidies isn't working.
Are you speaking on the welfare system or what?
Well, both.
Okay.
What I would love to see is all the money that we're throwing at racial disparity in whatever metric you choose. I'd love to see that reapportioned to skill-based trade.
Okay.
Apprenticeships need to come back in a huge way, and let's go to inner city Chicago, and let's create a school that teaches carpentry and welding and electricianship and plumbing, because those are skills that are super needed.
And they pay well.
They pay insanely well. I'll never forget when Marco Rubio said the last time he checked, a welder makes more than a philosopher.
Yeah, well, I went on a police ride-along, and he said he was making, before he became a police officer, he was making more money as an electrician because he's making $27 an hour.
And those are respectable, well-paying, needed jobs. And so you've got this pie in the sky of like, well, I'll never go to college, so I'm going to go sell drugs because that's easy and I'll make a ton of money. Well, sure, but chances are you're going to get shot or arrested, and then where are you?
It's another perpetual person in the system.
It is. So instead, let's find a way to do community-based, local, skills-based. I would love to have a situation where I have too many plumbers.
It's better than not having enough.
It's right, and the gap between where we are and too many plumbers is so far away that it's not a concern. That skills-based demographic is just shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, and I think some of that has to do with tech companies. Like you go back to the 50s or 60s, and if you were a good plumber, like you were the dude. People looked up to you and respected you and knew, that you were a leader in the community. And now, if you're a plumber, the guy that owns the software development company, or that owns the multimedia production company, or developed an app or wrote some software. Those are the leaders in the community, or the people that are looked up to as innovative and cool. And the plumber isn't. But you know what all those people do?
What's that?
Shit.
Yeah, they're also primarily the left-wing people too. So they're looked up to as the leaders in the community, like you said.
Sure.
But those are the Silicon Valley types.
They are. Yep.
And I think that's where the culture war is being lost, because the plumber he's being shoved down, even though they're still super essential and super important, but they're not the cool guy in the block anymore.
Yep. Absolutely.
So we're just getting back to the I was kind of
back to the topics.
No. I'm really glad you brought that up. But I wanted to bring up, so people advocate for bigger government, but it's the same people that are crying over Alfie.
Sure.
And I think that's something that needs to be addressed, because they want their ideologies to prosper, but they don't want to notice the downfalls of their ideologies at the same time. They're like, oh, that's horrible, but they refuse to recognize it's the same things they're advocating for that cause the atrocities that they're so worried about.
It's cognitive dissonance. They only choose to see the perceived benefits and refuse to see and comprehend the actual negatives that have been proved everywhere it has been tried. Everywhere. Anywhere that there's socialized medicine, you have death panels. Or you have to.
And the UK was described as third world conditions. And
right.
No, and because they don't have rooms for people. They're on gurneys in hallways.
Right. And anytime you have the government telling you what you can and can't do with a family member, imagine if Alfie's parents if he was totally healthy and they just kept him at home and refused to give him water.
They would be arrested.
They would be arrested for child abuse.
They starved him
But
out.
the hospital can unplug him from life support and wait for him to die, and that's medicine?
No, so what specifically happened, just in case anyone doesn't know, is they unplugged him from life support, and he survived.
For 3 more days.
And no, it was a little bit longer. They starved him for 3 days.
Oh, good.
So they stopped feeding him. They're like, all right, well, we have to kill him somehow.
Yeah, and it was supposed to be a dignified death.
And they literally let this kid starve out with armed guards around the hospital and room, so his parents couldn't take him to Italy to get health care that the Italian government said, like, hey, bring him here. We'll give him citizenship.
Yeah.
And you can use our hospitals.
Right.
And they wouldn't allow that.
Which boggles my mind. I mean, Italy is also socialized healthcare. So...
But there's a better morality for them.
Yeah, at least they wanted to try
yeah.
and say, what can we do for this kid? And I believe, too, part of it was testing. It wasn't proven science, but it was testing science.
Well, if the parents want to do it, let them.
Well, right, you've got 3 possible outcomes. What they do works, and it saves his life. What they do doesn't work, and they learn from it.
And it might save someone else's life.
And it might save someone else's life, or he just dies in a hospital in England.
But people are trying to implement this. Our politicians are. Hillary Clinton.
She just disappear?
She even said, it's not the parents' role to be the primary caregiver anymore. She said it's the government's role, and the parents should take a secondary...
Yeah, I remember that. I would not... Nothing could make me happier if Hillary Clinton just returned to roaming the woods of upstate New York, and we never heard from her again.
No, she really does need to go back in the woods. She just rears her ugly head. Like, she's so irrelevant now, and she can't just let it die that she lost.
And I've never seen someone who has committed more corrupt actions, somehow gotten away with all of them, and still keeps showing up in the spotlight. If I had done half of what she did and somehow gotten away with it, you never hear from me again. Because I would say, well, that was a freebie. Yeah. I'm gone. Well, stop looking at
the DNC email leaks, which I think is going to be crazy because WikiLeaks is countersuing.
Yep.
She committed like 15 felonies. But there was no intent in the crime. Like, that's what Comey said. Like, that was
gross negligence with the email server. Like, that's a crime.
Yeah. Well, that it just uncovered more. You know what I mean?
Right.
They uncovered the whole Bernie getting shifted. Like,
right.
That was insane.
Yeah. And I don't care for Bernie Sanders' rhetoric, and I hope to never meet Bernie Sanders. But I will say in the 2016 election, I do feel like he was the candidate that actually believed what he said the most.
He for all his downfalls, he was genuine.
He was generally wrong.
Yeah.
but he was genuine.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a respectability about that. I love the Hillary interview with hot sauce. Yeah. Okay. Pandering 101. And I voted for Trump, and I've said this whole long. I don't like defending Donald Trump because I think as a person he's done some really gross things that I don't like and agree with.
It's hard to defend.
Well,
even if you wanted to.
I don't want to. And I won't. And if someone says, well, if he's racist, well, that we can discuss. Because I have yet to see him make a law that says people of a certain color can't do a certain thing. And if you want to say, well, the Muslim travel ban, okay, those countries were selected by President Obama. They had nothing to do with race, and they had simply to do with race or with terrorist activities.
They were the terrorist training grounds for the 9/11 hijackers.
Right, exactly. And they weren't even in like the top 10 most populous Muslim countries.
No, 95% of Muslims across the world can still easily travel to the United States.
Right. So that whole thing, and if you want to say Donald Trump's a sexist, okay, maybe. Like
I would say he has done some things like the Stormy Daniels thing, which you can that's not good. But to call him a sexist, I think is a stretch because he had a woman campaign head for success.
The first one.
Yeah, and his cabinet's full of women,
mm-hmm.
and he's promoted women, and he's supported gay people. I think all those
Trump Tower was built by a woman.
All those narratives are just Facebook people, sharing stuff.
I don't see how you can have someone who clearly is obsessed with women, and then call him a sexist.
Do you think Nikki Haley might be the next president after him?
I don't think she would be the next. I would love to see her step into a much more public American role.
Yeah,
I think Nikki Haley is amazing.
Oh, she's amazing.
I also firmly enjoy Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I mean, what a horrible position to daily have to defend.
She thrives in it.
Really dumb stuff that the president has tweeted. And I go back and forth on Trump's Twitter because it is a double-edged sword, and while sometimes it's super effective and it bypasses, what will clearly be a twist from the media, sometimes he tweets some really dumb stuff that is not presidential, doesn't need to be said, and just sets him back 3 weeks in the polls.
Right.
And so what I'd love to see is them give Trump a dummy Twitter, where whatever he tweets, like it posts to his timeline and then it gets like 1,000 views and he's like, I did the tweet. But whatever he tweets actually goes to like a
filtering.
Well, like someone like Sarah Sanders can sit there and go, yeah, no, that one's good, send. Or like, no, we're not, no, delete.
Actually wouldn't be a bad idea, to be honest.
I would love to see that. Because I love the idea, I think in 50 years, people are going to talk about President Trump's Twitter in the same way that they talked about the fireside chats.
I 100% agree with that, and I've talked about that before.
Yeah, or even Harding's front porch speeches, because they were so different and won that candidate the presidency, or really, really were effective. And I firmly believe they'll be talked about and looked at the same way. So I don't like defending President Trump, but what drives me crazy is you've got this group of leftists and even some libertarians that refuse to ever see anything good about President Trump. If he cured cancer, they would say, well, cancer is actually necessary because it keeps the population down, and so you just hate humans. Like that's how it would be twisted.
You're right, because people are trying to say he didn't have anything to do with North Korea and South Korea.
I don't know how much he had to do with it. I think by putting pressure on Kim Jong-un.
And I think China was the biggest part.
China was definitely the biggest part.
Well, him forcing China to play their hand.
Yes, but he obviously did more than the last 4 presidents.
By far.
And simply by putting pressure and a spotlight on it, things moved ahead at a much quicker rate than they were before. So did Trump stand in the demilitarized zone and say, North, come here.
Yeah.
South, come here. Shake your hand. I don't know why he sounds like the Godfather now. No, clearly he didn't, but he had something to do with it.
He got the ball rolling.
He got the ball rolling for sure. And I've never seen him try to assume all credit. I've never seen anyone try to assign him all credit. But there's a group of people that refuse to say, well, he had nothing to do with it. Well, let me ask you this. If he had nothing to do with it, then why were you so scared he was going to start World War III?
Or
if he was such a non-player on this, then why were you so freaked out 3 weeks ago?
Even both world leaders say he played a part.
Right. Right.
They themselves Donald Trump kind of got this going. And
right. Well, and also at the same time, the House Intelligence Committee comes out with their finding that says no Russian collusion. Where has that been in the news cycle?
Nowhere.
No one wants to talk about it. And the people that do say, well, of course the Republicans found the Republican president innocent. Those Republicans are the same ones saying, if you fire Mueller, I will impeach you.
They don't like him.
They don't like him either. So, and the left will tout that and say, well, even the Republicans don't like him. And in the same sentence say, well, obviously the Republicans found him innocent.
Yeah.
Like, pick one.
Oh,
which one is it?
The left is inherently hypocritical, I think. And I think whether it's guns or school choice, whether they don't follow their own rhetoric, the one former senator in California just got arrested for running guns. It's incredible to me. But so back to the big government and overtaxation.
Sure.
How much of a role has the tax cut played in your business? How is that?
Well, it hasn't yet, but it will.
Okay.
So essentially, before small business tax was about 35%. Now it's down to 21%. So anytime you can give a business, essentially 15%, 14% of their yearly revenue back, that's huge.
Yeah.
And you've seen that with big companies giving out, millions of dollars of bonuses and thousands of dollars of raises and stuff like that. For a small business, it's huge. You're talking when it's a really small business, the level of finger on the pulse of the needs of the business are so accurate that, you know, I'm not just going to take that money and put it in my pocket, because taking that money and reinvesting into the business triples it, right? Because, you know, let's just say it was for an easy number $15,000 that we were going to get to keep as opposed to having to go out. I can jump on Amazon and go, great, that's 3 new camera lenses, that's a new editing computer, that's a new this, it's a new this. I get it, and then I can turn around and market a new service and make 3 times that.
And it allows your business to grow, like, it makes them more business and boost other business.
And then eventually hire an employee. And then they're making more money. So sure, are there people that are going to say, I'm already making enough money, I don't want to grow the business more, I just get to keep more of it? Sure.
Fortune 500 company.
Well, yes and no, but, you know, most of those CEOs weren't impacted. In you know, 15% of Best Buy's yearly revenue is a huge number. You know, it's a huge number that they can purchase more product with, that they can do more advertising with, that they can do more stuff with, just as a for instance. But, you know, the other side of being a small business owner is that you still have to pay into Medicare and Medicaid and all that craziness. And so you generally, you get taxed about 25%. So whatever you made from your business, you'll be taxed about 25%. It's a shocking number because most, you know, it's not being automatically withdrawn. Most people get a paycheck, their taxes are taken out, and what they get is what they get. You know, some people do it the opposite, where they would rather owe the government. I was never that way. I would much rather budget and not have to come up with $3,000 come tax season. But you don't. It's a shock when you own your own business and you get your taxes back and you owe everyone everything.
Well, that's a thing people need to learn about small. I've never owned a small business, but I do know a lot of small business owners, and I think that was a lot of the reason I wanted you on here is because I wanted your perspective on it, and because you're so politically active and knowledgeable. You are a really smart guy.
Careful with that.
I think so. But like a lot of small companies in their first couple of years. They don't make money. They break even if they're lucky.
Yeah, for sure.
And when you can allow that tax cut, it provides them more of like an ability to go forward.
Sure.
But when you over-regulate and over-tax these small companies, there's no room for failure, period.
No, not at all. What I would love to see is a tax scale for 1 to 5 years. So year 1, you pay 0 in tax. Year 2, you pay 5%. Year 2, you pay 10%. So kind of student loans will function on the same way, where it's a sliding scale of, you know, your first 5 years out of college, you're only paying X amount as opposed to, you know, and as you're making more money, you pay back more money. I would love to see a system put in place like that for small businesses. But you're exactly correct. It takes a while to even turn a profit, depending on the industry you're in and how quickly you get going. We were really fortunate to pick up a bunch of clients and get started, you know, and we're still not, you know, making as much as we'd like to, and some months as much as we need to. But having to manage a business and learn a trade a lot of times and upkeep equipment, the last thing you need is the federal government to tap you on the back and go, hey, all that money that you made, we need 25% of it now.
Right now.
Right now. Also, if you don't give it to us, you're going to jail. Okay. So, you know, I what I would love to see is I'd love to see the ability to opt out of Medicaid, Medicare, to opt out of Social Security.
I'm actually like big into like Social Security reform.
Sure.
And this is okay. So you brought that up. This is I want to see your opinion on this. I think Social Security can be a thing, but I think it should be optional. So
Yeah,
up until
sure.
the age of 30, you don't have to pay. You can, but you don't have to pay into Social Security until you're 30. At 30, you have to decide, do you want Social Security or not? And if you do want it, you get exactly what you pay into it back. If you don't want it, good on you. Keep your own money. I think that's the route we should go with it.
I'd like to, if it was up to me, I'd bump it back to 40. Just because so many kids are going to school for stuff that is not a marketable career, that they end up working in retail.
Feminist stance theory.
Feminist stance theory, yeah. Underwater basket weaving. That, they're not even in a career track now until they're in their 30s.
Oh, exactly.
So I think it would be much, I'd like to see it bump back to 40. Now, what's interesting with that is the amount you put in is the amount you get back. It wouldn't be worth it for anyone unless you've got someone willing to give you like a 10% interest. That money would be much better if you could invest it. Mm-hmm. So like if you could do an investment account and say, hey, I'm putting this money into this type of account. It doesn't get taxed, but every year it's getting invested. Your return would be huge. Tax-free would be the way to go. Similar to that, what I would love to see is a friends and family health savings account. So are you familiar with what an HSA is? I'm
not.
Okay, so an HSA, there's two types of them, but generally you can say, hey, job, I'm going to put $400 in this health savings account that will only be used for health stuff. It can go towards your deductible or buying prescription drugs, but it's earmarked for only health stuff, and the government won't tax it. Okay. So, for instance, when I worked for a certain wireless company, I'd put in the exact amount of money as my deductible. So, if anything ever happened, my deductible was just sitting there, tax-free. The downside of HSAs is if you don't use it, you lose it. So you don't get it back. It doesn't roll over.
How long do you have to use it?
1 calendar year.
1 calendar year?
Yep. So
I still think that's worth the risk.
Well, it is, as long as it's not breaking your bank. But what I would love to see is that concept taken outside of a job provider. So, for instance, if you had a family of 5, you could all pay into that HSA. Your parents, you, and your kid. So you've got 5 people that work off that, and it's heritable. So if your parents pass away, what they contributed to that rolls down to you, and then you can add your kids to it. And it's basically just a rolling, tax-free health fund.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Strangely enough, it's basically what the Amish do. Most Amish archbishops have an insane amount of cash on hand that if a member of their community needs hospital care, they'll show up at the bank with a duffel bag full of tens. And it's tax-free because it's cash.
Well, they're able to do that.
They're able to do that because they're not taxed, right? So that's what I would love to see in the way of healthcare.
Well, I wanted to get into that a little bit on the healthcare side of small business. So I know this.
There is no healthcare side to small business.
No, well, how much the ACA affected small business?
Well, it affected it in that what affected it most was the individual mandate. Because before, so I'm 31 years old. I think last year I went to the doctor once for a checkup. Mm-hmm. Last year I paid almost $300 a month for health insurance.
So you're sitting at $3,600 a month for a checkup.
For a checkup,
or
right.
$3,600 annually. Yeah, for a checkup.
For a checkup, right? So the individual mandate forced a bunch of people that didn't need to buy insurance to pay for people that were abusing insurance. Mm-hmm. With that individual mandate gone, people that don't need to buy insurance aren't buying it, but it's creating a deficit because the people that were abusing the system are still.
Yes.
And this whole concept of, I'm sorry you were born with a disease that requires a lot of money, I wasn't, I'm not paying for your care. Like that's horrible. You can never say that. But it's the truth of it. Life is not fair. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. I agree with you.
I have probably 2 of the worst eyes in the planet, and I'm not out there demanding that everyone pay for my LASIK.
Mm-hmm. Because if you want to donate, there's this foreign word to leftists. It's called charity.
Charity, yeah. Well, they legislate it.
If you, yeah,
and then it's not charity anymore.
If you want to donate, you should be able to donate.
Sure.
So any cause that you think is worth your resources.
Right.
But it's no one else's role to decide where your money should go to benefit individuals.
Right.
I think that's what's important. So
Absolutely.
I have no problem with some of my money going, but let me decide it.
Sure.
Let me allocate my funds, how much, when and where, and then I'll do it. I will definitely donate to charities all the time.
Sure.
It might be a couple bucks here and there, but like I have no problem helping others.
I also wouldn't be opposed to if there was a legislated amount. Let's say the government says every year you have to donate 15% of your annual income. But I'm going to give you a list of 300 places to donate it. Mm-hmm. And you can even divvy up and say 10% goes to the Boys and Girls Club, 10% goes to United Way, and 10% goes to this.
So instead, it's kind of like how you could do a cop-out on union fees.
Well, I've never been in a union, but...
That's how a lot of unions do it. And
gotcha.
I'm very anti-union. So
yeah,
like,
well, it's also not 1918, so we all should be.
Unions served a purpose at a point.
Yeah, they did.
But unions... So this is my favorite, because everyone loves to hate the police, right?
I like the police.
No, I mean, everyone's got to be.
I like the police until they pull out behind me.
Yeah.
Even if I'm not speeding.
So oh god, isn't that just nerve wracking?
Oh yeah.
You could be perfectly innocent.
Like, your cruise control set at 54 to 55.
Yeah,
all of a sudden you feel like felon. You can actually hear cops' music playing in the background.
So, with like how the unions work, if you want to get a bad cop off the street, you should be allowed to do that.
Sure.
You know what I mean, we don't want the wrong people being police officers. Everyone can agree on that. Left, right, middle, whatever. Unions don't allow that. Unions will fight tooth and nail to keep cops on the street that shouldn't be there.
Right.
And teachers. Teachers are my biggest one, but I love to use the cop example because everyone is like, oh yeah, obviously. But then when you bring up teachers, they're like, well...
Yeah, well, the education system is a whole different conversation. So I went to school for education. I've got a teaching degree. I substitute teach on the side now, so I'm pretty plugged into that. But I'd also kind of rather stay away from that just because I do currently work there, and some people like to be vindictive if they disagree with you.
Understandable.
So, where were we before unions? Selecting where your money and stuff goes.
Yeah.
And what I think would be really interesting is that you essentially keep programs based on popular vote. So when it turns out that most of the country doesn't care about
Planned Parenthood.
Well, yeah, that'd be great. Obviously, I think it would get a massive deduction in its funding. But I'd be curious to see what other programs just go away entirely. And I think there's nothing more democratic than the entire country being able to select where their money goes. And I could potentially even see where you have to specify a certain amount for roads if you drive. If you have a driver's license, yes, you have to. If you don't have a driver's license, you don't. That sort of fair and
pay into what you utilize.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something like that would be really interesting. I have no idea how it would be done or anything like that. But another system and I've thought about trying to create this marketplace. What I'd love to see is almost like a Facebook for student loans. So if you have student loans, you can create a profile, where you went to school, what you went to school for, why you went to school, what you're currently doing, and what your student loan amount is left. And if I jumped on there and I see, oh, this guy's got $5,000 in student loans left, and according to his story, if he didn't have to pay those, he could propose to his girlfriend. Okay, great, I'm going to pay those off for him. Then I get a receipt that I can claim as a tax deduction on my taxes.
Yeah.
And that's the system.
Yeah, or even chip away at, help them chip away.
Sure.
Yeah, and
it'd be like a crowdfunding, like a GoFundMe, but more with as a tax deduction.
You should do that. Start then. Charge 1%.
Charge 1%. Yeah. I'd rather just do it for free so someone pays off my student loans. But so many of those loans are government subsidies anyway. That why should you be taxed on giving the government its money back? That's
a good point. I never even thought about that. I mean, I really don't I do have some student loans I'm working off, but mine aren't that big. I got the GI Bill, which is I actually got from. So I'm right wing, obviously.
What?
Yeah, but someone's like, oh, you hate socialism, all this, but you use the GI Bill, and that's kind of hypocritical.
It's part of your income.
It's part of it's a benefit of the job I took already.
Right.
And I think that's what people I've caught flack for him on several times. But the government does play a role in national defense. We can all agree on that.
It should be 80% of its role.
Yeah, 100%. I also think. All right, so I'll get back to this here in a second, but they need to incentivize people to join because people aren't just going to sign up for no reason. They do need stuff like the GI Bill.
And the people that sign up for no reason generally aren't great.
Yeah. So I didn't sign up just for the GI Bill, but it played a factor in me signing. I felt like I needed to do more. I'm back in college. I'm finishing up strong, but I was like, I felt kind of like stale, and I was like, I'm stagnant. I need to do something more. Like I need to go, like work my ass off. I needed like this other experience. And that's what really drove me. But then the GI Bill's like, hey, we'll cover the rest of your school, like when you get back. And I was like, that was a big incentive. And I think, but we might disagree on this, and that's perfectly fine. I don't bring people on.
I would say we haven't disagreed yet, so we'll see if that happens.
I think we could cut military spending by half and run the same operation. So this is where people are like, oh man, like you're anti-military. Well, we do so many backdoor deals because it is our largest social program.
Sure.
Where those little bottles of Purell, they're like $5 at a gas station. It's like $80 a bottle for the Army to buy that, because what the Army does is when they make backdoor deals and they bulk buy, they pay more per unit bulk buying than instead of less per unit bulk buying.
Oh, I'm sure of it.
And that's where a lot of our spending goes. I think those deals just need to be like fixed. Like we need to get the politics out of the military.
Sure. And I do my best to never offer an opinion on something that I'm not educated on. And military spending is one of those things. So you having been there, sure, sounds good to me. I have no insight on that.
I encourage you to look into it. Like, there's several factories that we have an infinite surplus of tanks, but they still are pounding out tanks every day because they just do that. That's just what they do. There's no reason to keep making them, but no one wants to be the person to tell them to stop. So we're wasting millions of dollars a day making tanks.
They should start selling them to the public. I want a tank.
That'd be awesome. Our I know you're not directly from the area, but our police department here had a tank for like 4 years.
I mean, I grew up in Worcester. Worcester was my hometown for 20 years. I remember when Ohio State got their, what's it called, like an LRAT or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Like, why do you need an anti-terrorism vehicle at Ohio State University?
I could see Columbus Police Department having like one unit.
Sure.
But Orville, Ohio, population 8,000 people.
Right.
We don't need a tactical vehicle. I think they only used it for
parades.
Senior night at football games, and one time a person like locked themselves in the house and they like barricaded the doors. Other than that, it's served as a money pit.
I hear a lot of people complaining about militarizing the police. There's two sides of that. One of them I care about, one I don't. And the side I don't care about is where police are getting surplus military gear. I don't care. Great. If you have better body armor and you want to give your sheriff's deputies M4s, great. If they need the tool, they will use the tool. I'd rather have them have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
Well, that problem's arose before where that guy in L.A., I think it was L.A., who had full, SWAT gear on, and they couldn't penetrate his body armor with regular rounds. It was a big deal.
Right. Yeah. Turns out you can buy penetrator rounds really cheap online, that's a little scary. But anyway, the side I do care about is the psychology of the militarized police force, where you no longer have the Andy Griffith-style sheriff who, if he sees a kid steal a pack of gum, will pull him aside and say, hey, son, don't steal gum. Now run on home.
He'll handle it on a personal level. Like, not even in a poor way, but just like...
Now you've got, that same sheriff now will, drill sergeant that kid, or is on some sort of power trip, or thinks that, that the civilian is his private. You know what I mean? Not like his private.
He needs a lot of police. I'm very pro police.
So am I.
There's an authoritative difference where they think, like you said, private to sergeant. You know, and that is true. You see it a lot.
Yeah. And that's the militarization side that concerns me. And I've had a handful of interactions with law enforcement, and I've always found that the more respectful you treat them, the more respectful they treat you, until you find the one that's having a really bad day, and then no matter what you've done, it's
a big deal.
So it's interesting, but I think one of the hardest jobs in 2018 would be being a good law enforcement official.
It's hard because they do catch so much. Like former military police, myself, and I have a bunch of police officers that are friends and family. we don't catch anything but flack. No one's happy to see
right.
the police show up.
Yeah.
Unless they're
until they called you.
Yeah.
Then they're real happy. Yeah.
Oh, it's awful how these people are treated, and a lot of them really go out of their way to be community police officers. Like, there definitely are some bad apples and are just some assholes, but the good majority go way out of their way. I talked about in my last podcast. There's one police officer I did a ride along with recently, and he was giving out business cards for the electrician job because he was just kind of pertaining to what he said. He's like, we just need these guys to get jobs. He's like, it was for an electrician. He's like, they'll hire you. He's like, I know this guy. He's one of my best friends. He's my old boss. I say my name, he'll hire you.
Sure.
But they don't want to.
Right.
He said, I think maybe one person's gone. And he hands them out to all the people he thinks would, and it's quite a few. He's like, I try to get them jobs and get them off selling dope and all that. And he's like, they just don't want to do it.
Well, it's interesting that, like, the average income for a welfare recipient is something like 25% higher than minimum wage. So, sure, why?
Yeah, why get off that?
Right.
It incentivizes itself.
It does, absolutely. And that's why I'd like to see average welfare recipient should be 25% below minimum wage. And we can have the conversation of should minimum wage be higher. I think there's arguments for yes and arguments for no. But we should never reward someone for not working, which is what happens when your welfare package exceeds minimum wage.
Well, he said in Columbus, get this, there's 20-year-olds getting Social Security in Columbus because they're illiterate.
Sure, I believe
that's insane to me. Like, you're
it
literally just you're giving them money because they refuse to learn how to read.
Yeah,
like,
no, I
because
totally believe it.
Jacked off in school and like.
Yeah, no, it's probably true. It's scary, the lack of education and just accountability that's being taught in any way.
If you ever want to do police ride-alongs, let me know. By the way, they're so much fun. I just did one, and it was there was within 10 minutes in like 3 blocks there was a high-speed pursuit, which I was in that cruiser, and where they went into the lobby of a funeral home, and a double homicide, and it was literally down the street like at the same time. And then a couple streets over from that was a 1-year-old didn't have its parents. It was just like roaming around the middle of a major road.
I'm going to guess this wasn't in Orville.
It was in Columbus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which part?
It was, I'm not like super familiar with the roads of Columbus, but I was kind of by the Crew Stadium, like back in those neighborhoods.
Yeah. So I lived maybe 2 miles from there for about 6 years.
Okay.
We had a local police officer. It was car 40 that would drive up and down our street and flash his lights. And whoever ran, that's who he would go after. It was brilliant. Like, just see who's...
I think my favorite part of the whole ride-along was everyone trying to figure out who I was.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because you have to... I wore a dress shirt, and I was wearing khakis and some dress shoes. And I was... I think the roles that were assigned to me by the suspects and the witnesses were I was undercover, I was a snitch and telling the police on people, and that was the detective. And any single one, whatever was the prevailing story by them, that's what the police went with.
Okay.
In front of them towards me. It was like the funniest thing. It was kind of like a role playing. It was just the funniest thing I've ever seen.
That's funny.
So, I mean, if you want to do that. But
yeah.
I think it's about time we wrap this up.
Sure.
Good. All right, man. Thanks for coming out. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, tell your friends, and we'll catch you next time.